Anyway, I'll start at the beginning. I was born 61 years ago in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've been married for 41 years, and for those of you who have been married a long time, believe me, it has not always been easy. And I'm the mother of 5 children. I have a 38-year-old son, a 36-year-old daughter, 34-year-old daughter, 32-year-old son, 31-year-old son, and a 27-year-old daughter. I think that numbered 5, maybe 6, but anyway, 5. I have 4 grandchildren and 2 on the way, and I'm excited to tell you that one does live in Las Vegas, so that's very exciting. Anyway, when I was about 7 years old, something very interesting happened to me. In those days, as they say, we had core classes where 1 or 2 teachers taught every subject. Whether they were interested in art or not, they taught art. Whether they were interested in music or not, they taught music. So the assignment for the day was to draw a cow. Now, I lived in the big city of Philadelphia. I didn't even have a blade of grass in front of my house, and I heard of a cow, but I had never seen a cow. The only cow I had seen was a drawing in the butcher shop down the street that had been divided in all those different sections. So I was very excited. She put up this picture of this cow, and I divided my cow in various and sundry sections, put stars, stripes, flowers, all kinds of different things in the cow. I was very proud of my cow. Anyway, that night was the PTA meeting, and the teacher went around to everybody's drawing and praised each child, and she came to mine, and I just knew that she was going to rave and praise me to the hilt. And she said, now this child's parents better give her dancing lessons because she has no artistic talent at all. Well, I showed her a thing or 2. Anyway, so my husband and I went to this art exhibit in Westwood Village, and I saw this woman weaving. And I said, Neil, I can't explain it to you. I know how to weave. He said, what do you mean you know how to weave? I said, I can't explain it. Anyway, it was around Mother's Day, and I asked him to buy me a loom. Bought me a loom, I did this weaving, showed it to a friend of ours who was an architect, and he bought the weaving for $500. And living in this materialistic society, I said, if someone bought something that I did that was so much fun for $500, I've got a good thing going here. So I went from one weaving to the next, and then I started drawing. A friend of mine who was a professor at UNLV, Evan Blythen, came to the house and he said, Joyce, you have such a natural sense of design. Have you ever considered drawing? And I said, oh, I can't even draw that proverbial straight line, which of course, who wants to draw a straight line? That's why we have rulers. And I took just a 3-week class in beginning drawing because I had never been to college. After high school, I was married rather quickly, and then I had 5 children right after that. Bless you. And so I really did not have a formal education. Anyway, so I took this 3-week class in beginning drawing, and I discovered that even though what I was doing was not as realistic as everybody else's, I did have a style that was uniquely my own. And the first year that I started drawing, I sold 200 drawings, not for anything, believe me, over $5, because I was just excited that anybody would buy anything that I did. I published the first Las Vegas coloring book, and I did a line of educational material, and one day, a neighbor who I didn't know at the time, Mary Dombrowski, knocked at my front door, and she said, would you be interested in teaching my children art? And I paused and I said, well, I can't teach art because I'm not a teacher. And then I paused and I thought, of course I'm a teacher. We're all teachers. There's not one person in this room that does not have a wonderful story to tell. We seem to look upon artists as different and special people, and we're all exactly alike. We, as I said earlier, we all have the same desires, the same wants, the same needs. We just express it in different ways. And I think artists are not afraid. Many people are afraid of really being who they are. Luckily for me, I don't know how I got it because I came from a very traditional background. I've never been afraid of being who I was and thinking the way I wanted to think and doing what I wanted to think. And while we're in the subject, before I tell you about the classes. I want you to go out today and buy yourselves any single thing that appeals to you. And if you have a problem with your mates or whatever, my phone number is 877. Are you marking that down? Because we must do things that nurture our souls. Whether it means going and buying a yard of fabric that appeals to you, or some antiques that you really love, or a new book or whatever, or a new shade of lipstick, who cares, whatever it is. Stop feeling guilty about buying the things that you want that make you happy. Anyway, so I started the School of Creative Thinking, teaching. I started with 6 students, and up until this past January, I had close to 200 people a week, adults and children, doing creative living workshops, and it was very, very exciting. And this past January, after teaching for 24 years, I decided it was time for a change. And you have to trust your destiny in life and just allow things to flow. And the week after I stopped teaching, I got the largest commission of my lifetime by someone who had come to a tour and asked me if are any of you from Pennsylvania? Nobody from Pennsylvania. Well, the people who own the Sheets Corporation, convenience stores, fly me in every 2 months to do their home, and their entire home is being done with my artwork. And the week after that, which is the most exciting news, my designs were purchased by an international fabric company, and I will have Joyce Straus designs on the market this October, and I'm very excited about that. So those of you who sew, go to your independent fabric stores, and they'll be all over there. And the line is called Designs of the Desert, and it's manufactured by Northcott Monarch. So that's exciting also. And all this happened because I had the courage to stop teaching. Not that it wouldn't have happened anyway, but psychologically I would have been too stressed to handle all this. And so it was really nice that I decided to do that. And if I decide to teach again, I may. Decisions can be made in 1 second and changed in the next. It always reminds me of the story. I was about 40 years old and I was outside gardening, and I came in. I love raising herbs and vegetables, and I was perspiring, and I said to my daughter, Susan, your mother is getting old. And she said, don't ever let me hear you say that, because as long as you're lucky enough to be breathing and alive, you're young. And I always adapt that. And I used to say, 2 years ago, this room ended right here, believe it or not. And I always used to say, who knows, maybe when I'm 80, I'll enlarge the living room. And I turned 62 years ago, and I decided, why wait till I'm 80? I enlarged the living room then, and who knows, maybe the next time you come, I'll have a 3rd story on here. And why not? This is not a dress rehearsal. This is the real thing. Do what you want to do. You are in charge of your life. Nobody else has the right to make decisions for you. Anyway, so I went from weaving to drawing to pottery, and one weekend my husband, who loves horse racing, said, let's go to Arizona to the horse races. I noticed some of you are from Arizona. And I love horses, but I don't especially love horse racing. So I went to Arizona, but while he was at the horse track, I went to the antique bookstores. I've been a rare book collector since I'm 10 years old, as you can see, and I have quite a lovely collection of rare books. And lo and behold, in the window of one of the books, it said the ABCs of batik. And I had no idea what batik was. And for those of you who may not know, batik is the process of adding wax and dye to solid white fabric, going from your lightest color to your darkest color, and then washing, boiling, or dry cleaning it out. I dry clean it out, and when I go to my dry cleaners, they roll out the red carpet, because my dry cleaning bills often are $500 a month, just removing all the wax. But in the time that I could be boiling it out, I can be doing 20 other art pieces. So you have to know when to delegate your different responsibilities. People also ask me, how does your house stay so wonderfully organized? I am an extremely organized person. I not only operate on the right side of the brain, but the left as well. And I think that's how you really get a successful business and a career. I'm sensible enough to know, even though it's expensive, I do have people pick up after me when I work. There's no possible way in a 9,000 square foot house that I could do everything myself. Anyway, being a very obsessive type of person, and I'm so thrilled, love your neuroses, people, don't punish yourself for it. I love the fact that I get an idea and then I become mesmerized by it. I literally close to mastered the art of petite, and within 6 weeks I'd done so much fabric, I decided it was time to go into business. So I took all my fabrics and I went around to different design companies, and I brought my fabrics to one designer who said, "These are wonderful. How long have you been working with fabric?" And I said, "Oh, just a short time." I didn't want to say 6 weeks. When he saw stacks and stacks of fabric, he would have thought I had elves like Santa Claus doing my work for me. And he gave me a commission for a $3 billion hotel, Lowe's of San Francisco. It was the most exciting thing. It made the headlines of the Las Vegas Sun. And I worked diligently for 6 months. And after 6 months, the deal fell through. And it was the best thing that could ever happen. Because where would I have had the direction and the motivation to work that hard to perfect something than somebody giving me a commission to do something? So everything has a purpose and everything has a way of choosing your attitude to look at it. You have two choices in life, to look at things in a positive way or to look at things in a negative way. And if you can, why look at the negative way? Everybody has something to bemoan. Nothing is perfect and it's not meant to be perfect. So make the best with what you have to work with and then go on from there. So after working with Petite for 2 years after that, I decided it was time for something new. And I had gone to lunch with my friend Joanne, who was the arts and crafts counselor for Valley Psychiatric Hospital. She hated her job. And I said to her, "Joanne, I teach in the afternoon. Do you mind if I apply for your job if you hate it so much?" And she said, "No, I'd love you to because I'm going to quit. And also, I don't think you'll like it. They're just paying $5 an hour." I said, "That's okay." I had always been interested in art therapy. So I made a proposal for the 2 head psychiatrists, and I did get the job for $5 an hour. They loved my presentation. And within 3 months, I was making $60 an hour. It was very exciting. In the time that I was there, I had this art therapy table, and I had all these people come up, learning different things that I was doing, throwing in a little bit of the philosophy of the reality of life along the way. And it was Halloween time, and I collect African art. And to me, it's the most amazing of all the art from all the different countries. And it was Halloween, and I brought in my collection of African masks to show the patients how we all try to disguise our feelings rather than having the courage to be who we are. And this one 42-year-old man, Jack, who was brought in attempted suicide, gunshot wounds, stayed away from my table because art is not considered a priority in our society because it doesn't make a lot of money. And he teased me, and no matter how much he teased me, I let it roll off my back and still loved him and accepted him. Halloween, he came up to me and he said, "Joyce, I have a present for you. I have finally decided to adapt your positive attitude to my depression," and he drew this picture for me. Isn't that amazing? And he wrote on the back, "Joyce Straus suffers from terminal bliss." And it's really true, because I choose to make each day an incredible adventure. Is each day perfect? Of course not. My husband left in a miserable mood this morning. I'm telling you, I didn't even mention it to Kathleen when she came. By the way, I want to introduce you to Kathleen. Kathleen was my watercolor teacher and my assistant during the tours. I didn't even mention it, and he had a good reason. He was up, he had 5 calls during the night, and it was really, really difficult. I had a choice to allow his disposition to affect my disposition today, or just shrug it off and say, he owns the right to whatever he feels. This is what we have to do in life. I can tell you honestly that 90% of my days are ecstatically wonderful because I won't have it any other way. Think about it. It's not a power that I have, it's a power we all have. We just don't all choose to use it. Anyway, in the 7 years that I worked at Valley Psychiatric Hospital, guess what? I never met a crazy person, because there is no such thing. There is only crazy behavior, which we all exhibit at different times when things are not going well. And it was very, very sad to me that they closed their psychiatric ward because the government would no longer subsidize, exactly what was going on. Anyway, time went by, and one morning the most wonderful thing happened to me. Before I tell you that, I have another story to tell you. My daughter called me one morning and told me that she was getting married. I was very excited. And she said, come to New York and we'll look for wedding dresses, which we ended up having made anyway. But I flew to New York. The day I got to New York, in the smack of the Herald Times, was an a photo that said Louise Nevelson dies at age 92. I had no idea who Louise Nevelson was. Louise Nevelson was an incredible sculptor who, interestingly, did not do any of her own work, just designed it and had other people cut it out for her. I looked at the picture of her work behind this wonderful, glamorous portrait, and I said, this is what I've wanted to do my whole life. In reality, everything is what I've wanted to do my whole life. Remember the days when if you started a little embroidery project, your grandmother would say to you, don't start that until you finish this. That's ridiculous. You don't want to finish something, don't finish something. Why do you have to finish everything you start? It's ridiculous. Who do you have to answer to? If there's one thing I want you to leave with today, remember to answer to yourself. It's sort of like that little dress that someone bought you when you were 5 years old and said, save it for your next birthday. And by the time your next birthday came, you never fit into the dress. Don't save things, use things, enjoy yourself, enjoy life. Answer only to yourselves. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. So I came back to Las Vegas and I bought $8,000 worth of woodworking equipment. Bandsaw, scroll saw, Dremel, you name it, I bought it. If I'm going to put my energy into something, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm going to get the best equipment. And the first piece that I did was the wall. It first started white, then it was black, then it was gray. Now it's in shades of copper, and I'm still ready to add a darker copper to it. I've been working on it the past few weeks, so it's still not completely finished yet. And it's so funny, mentioning that story. I was lying in bed one night, and I said to my husband, you know, Neil, I have accumulated so much artwork. What am I going to do with all of it? I think it's time to open a gallery. What do you think? He paused and he said, well, honey, I don't think it's a good idea. Then I knew it was the right thing to do. Not that I don't value his opinion, but like a little child, I was raising my hand, asking permission for something that I knew that I wanted to do. So I opened a gallery. He was right. I hated it. I hated dealing with the public, having someone say my sofa's blue and yellow, do blue and yellow flowers for over my sofa. And luckily, I only lost a little bit of money. But when I started working with wood, I got, at that time, the largest commission of my life, and I designed and built my own gallery, which you'll get to see in the backyard. So that's exciting. Anyway, the next adventure that I had was one morning when my husband was getting dressed for work, and a white button fell off his shirt. And he said, do you have a few minutes to sew a white button on for me? So I said, oh, sure. So I went into my itty-bitty little sewing box. It was about this big. And I discovered that I had black, brown, beige, and navy blue, and I didn't have white thread. So I heard there was a new fabric store that opened up in Decatur and Charleston. You've got to go there. It's called Fabric Boutique. It's the largest quilting fabric store in the United States. It's phenomenal. So I went to Fabric Boutique to get a $1.19 spool of thread. And I walked in, and I saw this Pfaff machine doing all these computerized stitches. Well, $5,000 later, I began my career in abstract quilting, patchwork, etc. And it has been the greatest joy in my life. What do people do who don't sew? It amazes me, those of you who sew. It is the most wonderful, therapeutic, creative adventure in life. One of the most, anyway. So I started doing all this wonderful stitchery, and of course then I went from this itty-bitty-witty sewing container to a mammoth sewing room that you'll see also. And one thing led to another, and as I was sewing, one day my friend Rita came to visit me, and she was jingle-jangling a keychain with a piece of glass at the end of it, and the glass was all these beautiful colors. And I really never thought I would want to work in glass. And I said to her, Rita, what is that? She said, it's fused glass. Well, $3,000 later, I bought this enormous glass kiln. All this glass sculpture and metalwork is mine, the glass on the floor, and the tables, the dining room chairs, and the wild women shelves are a line of furniture that's being marketed and sold in various and sundry places. The metal and glass on the wall is mine. This life, I'm very excited about it, which is one of the reasons why Doug is here videoing what's going on today, because his friend is the editor of the book, and it will be out, and I do have a page where you can sign up if you may be interested. But anyway, the reason that that came into being is Macy's, which used to be Bullock's in Las Vegas, emptied their second floor and gave me a one-woman show called Eve's Gift to Adam. I love Bible stories. I think there is no greater truth in the world than Bible stories. You know, you walk into Borders or Barnes & Noble, and the self-help books are endless. They go shelf after shelf, and if they have something to offer you, wonderful. But the answer to almost everything in life is found in the Bible. It's very interesting. And the Adam and Eve story, which is the story, of course, between the relationship between a man and a woman and family, intrigues me the most. So this was the first piece, and this is called Eve's Choice. And this piece is batik on silk twill. So this piece started solid white, and I went from my lightest color to the darkest color, and on the back it says, this belongs to Joyce Straus, as the concluding piece does, because my children are very funny. They know I sell everything, so when they want something, they make me write on the back. And she wanted it for her college graduation, so I gave it to her. And before I go into that, speaking of children, I deeply feel I am a very fortunate person. Life has been very generous to me, and I try to give back as much as I can. But I think my greatest blessing, as Kathleen can tell you, I have 5 extraordinary children, and my children are married to 5 extraordinary people who I love almost, not quite as much, but almost as much as my own children. So I feel very grateful about that. And the nicest thing, too, is they love each other. And that to me is really a gift. And what I think I did, you know, they say things don't happen by accident, but I think one of the things that I did, I was not a controlling parent. I learned early in life that to control devastates everybody. And the only thing we really can control anyway is ourselves. And we even have a hard time doing that, so why try to control anybody else? And I just let go, and I let them be. And I think it was a very wonderful lesson that came to me at a young age, so I was very lucky. Anyway, that was one of the first pieces. The Shearings owned the other 22 pieces. And this was another piece, and it's hard to see because the ink is fading on this one. I'm going to have to fix this up. It's called No Leaves on the Tree of Knowledge. And it basically shows Eve with the bright apple, but Eve has no arms, so she will not be tempted by the temptation. And Adam is lying on the ground, and his arm is becoming the tree of knowledge. And it's called No Leaves on the Tree of Knowledge because no one else can be your tree of wisdom. That's what God's for, and that's what you're for. You must make your own decisions. I would rather see my children make a wrong decision, even though I really believe there are no wrong decisions. You are where you're supposed to be, with whom you're supposed to be with, for some reason, or you'd be somewhere else doing something else with someone else, if that makes any sense. And I think just make peace with that, and you'll see that everything leads to something else. One of the other pieces, every time I go into a new form of art, I add that also, and this was my glass era. And here is the serpent at the bottom holding the glass apple with the glass tree of knowledge, and Eve turning into a butterfly, and the piece is called Free at Last. The concluding piece of the show, and believe me, to do a house tour, I think you all know, because you've all been to house tours before, you could just walk through the house. You wouldn't know the difference, but I would know the difference. I like people to leave hearing another person's perception of life in the world, because basically that's what we're here for. We're here to teach each other and to learn from each other. There is no greater teacher in the world than another human being. They don't have to have 1,000,000 degrees. They just have to be open and resilient to learning and hearing from each other. This was the concluding piece, and it's called The Gift. And it represents the serpent with a checkerboard for the game of life, injecting into the convolutions of the brain the greatest gift that we have, which is the gift of choice. So the umbilical cord is turned into a gift bow, male and female for the strength and tenderness within each of us, and the tree of knowledge with purple hearts for the courage that it takes to be a human being. And I don't plan these things out. What I usually do is if I walk into a room with white fabric, it's almost like I have to wear blindfolds because I see everything finished. I mean, I'm looking her sitting on the chair in a white outfit, and I can see it with all sorts of interesting things on it. Not that the white isn't beautiful. But when I see something plain, I immediately see this, and it's almost like just tracing what's already in my brain. The next piece that I want to show you is I love folk art. I really love folk art. This piece is called Choosing, and it shows Abraham being told to slaughter his only son. So it's to slaughter or not to slaughter or not to slaughter. And the one with Adam and Eve is Eve reaching for the apple and pulling her hand back. All these pieces are going to be part of a whole Genesis series. A light is going to turn on. It's going to be connected to electricity, and all these pieces are going to be moving in different directions. And this is what I'm going to be working on this year now that I have the extra time. The other thing that I want to point out to you on that wall, the touch of the hand at the same time. I have a Macintosh, and I am madly in love with my Macintosh. Anyway, I want to show you this before we go to this piece. These are my spring cleaning pieces. My neighbors bring all their junk to my front doorstep, and I recycle everything. So this is an old vacuum from when we remodeled a bathroom, and everybody teases me that this is OJ's missing glove. And what I want to show you when I first started working with wood, this piece is called Catching the Patched Golden Ring. Now, years ago when you were on a carousel, if you caught the brass ring, you won a certain prize. Now, I was walking down the street and I found this imperfect thing in natural wood, and I brought it home and sprayed it gold, and I really want to keep it broken like that for a specific reason. So here we are, humanity in the desert, and the reason that I kept it imperfect, at the bottom of this wooden piece, for those of you who can't see, is a heart cut in half, because if you strive for perfection, you end up with a broken heart. Perfectionism is slow death. Those of you who find the need to keep everything perfect, I can only implore you, make your life easier. Take that pressure off yourselves. Simplify your lives. Relax. You're here to have fun, not to be in pain. Perfectionism causes everyone trouble, and I'm very lucky. I really have never been a perfectionist, even though I love doing things with a semblance of order. But there is a degree. I have seen more lives ruined because of perfectionism. Nobody wants to be loved because they weigh 103, have blue eyes, and curly blonde hair. Nobody wants to be loved only if they get rid of their wrinkles. And I'm not putting down plastic surgery for those of you who might want to do it. It's just not something that I perceive myself doing, because I love getting older. I know that sounds fake, but I'm telling you that I love getting older. Every stage has a wonderful plateau of rewards. And now that I'm 61 and a half, 61 and 3/4, really, almost 62. So what? I hate to shock you all, but none of us are going to live forever. I mean, we may as well accept it and make the best of the aging process. And you know what I believe, and I've discovered this, our entire lives are geared to learning how to be great older people. And I think for those of you who are younger, if you keep that in mind, you're going to learn all these wonderful little tricks as you go through your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And I mean, I cannot wait to be 70, 80, and 90, because I'm going to be a terrific 90-year-old symbol. And that's what we all have to be. We have to be role models for each other so that we learn for each other along the path of life.